Hello, welcome to another video where we deep dive one of my songs in Logic Pro. Today we're looking at my latest single, Not Going Out. And here we are within the Logic session of Not Going Out. I want to jump straight in and start with the very first thing that I created for this song, and it was just messing around with the different sounds in Keyscape. And I came across this Fender Rhodes bass. Never used one before, so I thought, let's give this a go and see what different sounds I can create. And this is the first thing that I came up with. So that is that kind of driving bass line that you hear right at the beginning of the song. That alongside the little pre-chorus bass line section with the run were the first things that I came up with for this song. I was just messing around with different sounds, and that is where I landed. At the same time, I had just got my hands on the Marco Polo drum pack from Native Instruments, and so I was really messing around with thinking, how can I use this new sound that I've got? And I was really looking at how it's got two different kick sounds. So we've got our first kick drum sound of the pack, and then there is a second slightly different sounding kick. So I thought, let's make a bit of an interesting pattern out of these two different kicks, where there's a little section where we hear a different pitch. And that's kind of where everything built from. This kind of driving, bouncy feel from the bass and the kick together. And I quite like to get all of this in place first. I always start with sorting out my drums, my bass, my chords, so that I have a basis of a song before I start adding lyrics. And so this is where I added in the keys to the section. I wanted to have quite a bit of space still within the instrumentation, so I added these chords on a Wurlitzer and an organ that would allow a little bit of space to be left within the surrounding instruments. I think it is really important to remember how much the silences add to a song, as well as when you are making actual noise. The silences are as much of an important part as the notes themselves. That's what helps us create the groove. That's what helps us lock everything in together. That, in the verse, is where I wanted to be, having groove-led instrumentation. In the chorus, however, this is where I start adding in a lot more from the electric bass guitar and my electric guitars, so that they fill out and bring that energy that I want from the music that I'm creating. So in the chorus, we can see that I've added in some bass and some electric guitars, which are going to now bring the energy. So take a listen to how this chorus builds with the electric bass and the electric guitar. And that is the basis of all of the instruments that go into this song. There's really not a lot going on in terms of the backing instruments. A lot of then the personality of the song is coming from the vocals. And you can see I've got a lot of vocal tracks recorded for this song. Majority of everything is vocals, and even when you get down here, we've got loads and loads of copies of gang vocals. I've got a main, a yell, a deep, octave low, octave high, and a bad version, each of which have got 6 versions of it recorded. So 6 times I went through and sung each of these parts. So it took a lot of time, but this is the reality of working on your own on music. It would have been great if I'd had a full band with me and I could have got us all round one mic together, but that's not the situation that I'm in. And it might not be the situation that you are in, and so you can do this as well. You can take a gang vocal and you can record multiple versions of it and get this same effect. So let's start with the main lyrics. So this is just isolated on its own, the lead vocal and the double of the first verse.
I really wish that I could get you off my mind, 'cause when you walk on by, it's like I'm hypnotized.
Now what's really crucial to make sure that we get these really tight doubles of these tracks, for me, is the plug-in Vocaline. So you can see here on this verse double track, I've got Vocaline added on, which is taking the original lead vocal track as a sidechain input and then doing some little bits of time aligning to make sure that all of the consonants line up together, to make sure that when we hear T's and S's that they're all lined up, and so it sounds like one vocal take with a little bit of extra thickness. This is done all throughout the song, so I have doubles of everything, especially when we get to the chorus. I like to actually double 4 times and then pan some left and right to create a bit of extra width.
Time you hear me speaking, I'm not going out tonight. I'm not going out tonight. Not getting caught up in your vibe, 'cause I'm not going out tonight.
And you can hear on there that because there is a lot of personality going into this vocal take, a lot of those P's are really pushing through. And so if I didn't have the Vocaline on, it would be a lot harder to manually move all of that to make sure that everything lined up the way that I wanted it to line up. The next part to look at really is these gang vocals. So as I said, I have recorded 6 different types of gang vocal, each one recorded 6 times. So that is to get the feeling of there being a bigger group behind me. So if we have listened to those in isolation, you can see that actually they're just all my voice.
Say it once, say it twice. You hear me speaking.
So that's just me recording that so many times that it sounds like a larger group, but it is just full afternoon's worth of work going into recording the same line over and over again. I want to have a look now at some of the mixing that I did for this track as well. You can see I've got a lot of UAD plugins. I like to make use of some analog sounding gear. I think it really does bring extra character to a song, and particularly one that hasn't been recorded within a professional studio environment through outboard gear. I have to get that kind of vibe from the plugins that I have. I always start my mixes by processing my 2-bus first. So my stereo out is the first thing that gets processed. And I did that with a little bit of EQ from the Pultecs that UAD have. I say a little bit, actually quite heavy-handed. I like to make sure that I'm striving for a sound. I don't necessarily fully subscribe to this idea of you shouldn't be able to hear the mix. I think if you want to get a certain character, make sure you get that character from the mixing that you're doing. Obviously, if you don't want to hear the mix and it wants to be a song that is quite natural, then you would take a different approach. But this song is all about the attitude, and that attitude comes in part from the way that the sound goes through this analog gear. So, I mean, just with this on its own, let's go to a part of the song where we can hear a lot of stuff happening. So this will be our last chorus here. And let's turn these on and off just so we can hear the bit of a difference that it's going to make. So you can hear there that there's actually quite a bit going on. This is how I like to start everything. I like to do as much as I can through this stereo bus so that then on the other tracks, I there can be a little bit more tame with the things that I'm doing. The other important part to the way I like to mix is through these stereo effects at the end here. I always run this exact same setup of having a plate reverb, of having a slap, a quarter note delay, a tape effect, a bit of a spreader for some extra width, and a room reverb for any of my instruments. Those first sets, so the plate, the slap, the quarter, the tape, the spread, that is all for my vocals. All of my vocals go through all of those, and they're all the same sounds, so that it sounds like one vocal being processed instead of different voices in different rooms. So these first two here are the CLA Echosphere, and I have one of them just fully on the plate and one of them fully on the slap. I like to separate these out just so I have a little bit of extra control. I could just run it through one plugin and blend my plate and slap through here. I just personally prefer to keep the plugins closed once I've got the sound and do everything from my mix down here and my sends on the tracks themselves. Next thing along is just the standard Logic stereo delay, just with a quarter note delay, slightly different on the left and right, just so that we can get a little bit of space going on. We then have the UAD Studer tape machine. This is very, very subtle, just adding a little bit of that tape warmth to the vocals. And then finally, got a spreader that just spreads out the vocals a little bit wider so that they sound a little bit larger than life. And that is the basic rundown of my song, Not Going Out. This song is out on Spotify now. Please go and have a stream of the song if you have enjoyed what you hear in this video. Please give a like and a subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. I've got a lot more coming throughout this year. And leave a comment down below if there's anything more that you would like to see. I do want to do some longer, in-depth videos like this, but they would probably be very, very long for YouTube. So I might be thinking maybe put them on something like a Patreon if that's something you're interested in. But let me know by leaving a comment down below. Thank you very much. I will see you next time.